Welcome back to Basement Integrity Podcast by IcyReno, episode 20. Last time, we took a deep dive into safer foundations through sectional underpinning in Toronto, really exploring what makes a foundation secure.
Yeah, and why that matters so much for your home.
Exactly. So today, we're building on that, tackling something lots of Toronto homeowners think about when they want more space. Basement benching. What works and what to watch out for. You know, in Toronto, real estate is just so valuable, every bit counts. So looking down, expanding downwards, it feels like a really smart move.
It often is.
And that usually brings up two main ways to lower a basement. Underpinning, which, well, we often call it the gold standard.
Right.
And then there's benching. And benching often gets pitched as, the cheaper, maybe faster option.
And that's really our mission for this deep dive. We talk with so many clients, maybe like Sarah and Mark you mentioned from Leslieville, trying to weigh these options. Add space, but, keep the budget in check.
Right.
So today, we want to look closely at benching, sort of through their eyes. What is it? How does it actually work? And probably the biggest question, when is it the right call for your place here in Toronto? Or maybe when isn't it?
Yeah.
It's really important to figure out if saving some money now might lead to bigger headaches or compromises later on.
Okay, let's unpack that for everyone listening, like Sarah and Mark.
Yeah.
Benching, what is it exactly, like in practical terms?
Good question. So benching, it's a basement lowering method that, and this is the key difference from underpinning, it specifically avoids messing with your existing foundation.
Oh, okay.
So instead of digging under the footings, like we do with underpinning,
Right.
our team digs out just the middle part of the basement floor. The edges, the perimeter walls, their footings, they stay put, completely untouched.
Ah, okay.
And what happens then is we pour this thick concrete ledge, this bench, right along those edges that we left alone. So this bench, it creates this raised ledge, and that supports the old foundation walls above it while letting you have a lower floor in the middle section. It's a very specific way to get more headroom.
So yeah, the analogy we use sometimes fits perfectly here. Imagine scooping out the middle of a bowl but leaving the rim totally intact. That's pretty much benching.
Exactly. That's a great way to picture it.
And you can see the appeal right away, especially if you're watching the budget, like maybe Sarah and Mark are.
Yeah.
It sounds faster, definitely cheaper, maybe less hassle with permits or engineering compared to underpinning.
Absolutely. The appeal is, well, it's undeniable for a lot of folks, especially when cost is the main thing. Benching can genuinely save you maybe 20, sometimes up to 40% compared to doing a full underpinning job.
Wow, that's significant.
It is. And because you're not doing that really intensive digging under the foundation, benching projects usually move quicker. There's often less structural review needed from the city. So, yeah, we definitely see people interested if they just want, say, a basic rec room or maybe just better storage. For that, benching can look really tempting.
That cost saving, the speed, yeah, those are big ticks in the pro column for benching. But it can't be that simple, can it? Otherwise, why wouldn't everyone just do that?
Exactly.
Where do the trade-offs really show up, beyond that initial price tag? What are the maybe hidden costs or compromises people need to know about?
This is really where we, as IcyReno, try to get homeowners thinking more long-term, beyond just the upfront dollars saved. Benching, well, it can seriously limit what you can do later and how your home actually functions, and frankly, its value.
Okay.
The most immediate thing, and sometimes it surprises people, is the hit you take on functional space and design.
How so?
Well, those concrete ledges, the benches themselves, they're not small.
Yeah.
Usually they're going to be, say, 12 to 24 inches wide.
A foot or two wide.
Yeah, easily. And maybe 2 to 3 feet high, running all the way around the edge of your basement.
Okay.
Now think about a typical narrow Toronto basement. Every inch counts, right?
Oh, yeah.
Losing that much space around the entire perimeter, it's a lot. You get the lower floor, sure, but you've literally boxed yourself in with concrete. We had this one client, actually pretty similar situation to Sarah and Mark. They put in benching, got their vintage sectional down there, and suddenly fitting it in felt like navigating a concrete maze, not creating a cozy living room.
Huh, I can picture that.
It really dictates everything.
And it's not just the floor space you lose, is it? It must mess with other things too, like how you place furniture.
Totally. Furniture placement becomes a real puzzle. Storage options get limited. And think about something really important like putting in an egress window, what big enough to escape through in an emergency.
Commercial for safety.
Absolutely. But those benches can make installing one incredibly difficult, sometimes just plain impossible because they're physically in the way.
Right, that concrete barrier.
Exactly. And it keeps going.
Yeah.
When you get to finishing the basement, drywalling around those ledges is awkward. Trying to get the nice open concept feel.
Forget it.
Pretty much. Or putting in built-in cabinets. The benches are always there, always limiting what you can really do. And this is a big one for Toronto. It seriously impacts whether you can build a legal basement apartment.
Ah, yeah, the income potential.
Right. It becomes much harder, maybe impossible, to hit those strict ceiling height rules and the egress requirements with benches in the way.
Okay, so layout is a big issue. What else?
Well, another key thing is reduced market appeal. Think about when you go to sell. If a potential buyer walks into your renovated basement and the first thing they see are these big concrete ledges all around, it doesn't usually scream desirable feature.
No, probably feels like a workaround.
Exactly. It often feels like a compromise. And that perception, it can definitely hurt your resale value, or at least limit who's interested. Buyers in Toronto, as we know, they're smart. They're looking for maximally usable space.
Okay, makes sense. Anything else?
Yes, and this is a big one for us, because we deal with the fallout. Waterproofing can get tricky.
Ah, water. Always finds a way.
It always does. That seam, where the new concrete bench meets the old existing foundation wall, that joint can become a weak spot over time.
Right.
And if the waterproofing isn't done absolutely meticulously right there at those specific spots, well, you could be setting yourself up for moisture problems down the road. Leaks, dampness, maybe even serious water damage. It's a vulnerability you have to manage really carefully.
Okay, so those are some pretty significant potential downsides. If benching has these issues, how does underpinning tackle them? What does the gold standard actually deliver in comparison?
Right. So underpinning, if we look at the bigger picture, it's just a fundamentally different approach. It's what we really see as the comprehensive solution. It means we actually dig underneath your existing foundation walls.
Okay, right under.
Yeah. And we literally extend those foundation walls deeper down. So this new, deeper foundation supports the entire house structure. And crucially, your whole basement floor gets lowered to one single, consistent level surface.
No steps, no ledges.
Exactly, no ledges. And the advantages there are pretty clear. First, the most obvious one. You maximize this space completely. You get open, flat, totally usable floor from wall to wall. That's huge for layout, for design total flexibility.
Yeah, I see that.
Second, if you are thinking about a legal basement apartment, underpinning is way better for hitting those city requirements. We can get the ceiling heights needed. We can install proper egress windows much more easily. It just works better for compliance.
Okay.
And it costs more upfront, no doubt.
Yeah.
But underpinning usually gives you a much higher long-term return on investment. That ROI is key. It adds real functional square footage, and that definitely boosts your property value, especially here in Toronto. It's an investment that tends to pay back when you sell.
Yeah.
Plus, here's something else. When underpinning is done right, it can actually strengthen your home's foundation. It can improve the overall structural integrity. So, yeah, it's more involved, more invasive maybe, but the benefits are just far more complete.
That really brings it home, especially for our listeners in Toronto, maybe like Sarah and Mark, thinking about our city's housing stock. Those older homes, Victorian semis, the narrow lots, those bungalows. What specific things should people be considering here?
Yeah, Toronto's context is really unique, isn't it? So many of the homes we work on, Annex Victorians, Leslieville narrow lots, Scarborough bungalows, they were built with pretty shallow basements to begin with, often outdated foundations, not much headroom. That history matters a lot when choosing how to lower it.
So how does that play into the benching versus underpinning choice?
Well, take Toronto's zoning rules, for instance. They're really specific, especially for basement apartments. You need certain ceiling heights, proper ventilation, those egress windows we talked about.
Right.
Benching often just won't get you there. You might end up investing in a renovation that doesn't actually create a legal rentable unit. That's a big risk.
Ouch, yeah.
Then there's the whole neighbor proximity thing. In dense areas, think Trinity Bellwoods, Parkdale. Your house might be semi-detached or just really close to the next one.
Very common here.
Super common. So the digging method you choose, it could potentially affect shared walls or even your neighbor's foundation. Underpinning needs super careful planning in those situations, obviously, but benching might have its own set of considerations for neighbors too. Our team always does a thorough assessment of that.
Okay, good point.
And finally, just resale value expectations in Toronto. They're high. Buyers here are savvy, like we said. They know the difference between a fully underpinned basement maximizing space and a benched basement, which often signals compromise. Underpinning adds clear, tangible value that buyers recognize and pay for. That's really important in this market.
Okay, so given all of that, it sounds like a lot of reasons not to bench. Is there ever a time when benching actually is a sensible choice for homeowners like Sarah and Mark, or is it mostly compromises?
What's interesting is benching isn't inherently bad. It absolutely is a valid technique, but really only in the right context and for fairly specific, maybe more modest goals.
Okay, so it has its place.
It definitely has its place. Think about, say, an older couple in a bungalow. Maybe they just want a comfy, dry spot for a TV room or for the grandkids to play, but they're not planning a full apartment.
Right.
They might just need a few extra inches of headroom to feel less cramped down there. Or maybe it's improving a utility area like the laundry space without doing a huge structural job. Or, a young family on a really tight budget who just needs enough height to walk around comfortably in their storage area.
So more about basic usability than a full reno.
Exactly. In those kinds of cases where, a high-end finish, maximizing every square inch for resale or creating a legal suite isn't the main goal, then benching can be a practical, cost-effective way to get that bit of extra headroom.
But you have to know what you're getting into.
Absolutely. The key is going in with your eyes wide open, understanding exactly what you're trading off in terms of that layout flexibility, the long-term value impact, and maybe limiting future options. It's not a bad method. It just serves a different purpose.
Okay.
The analogy I sometimes use is it's a bit like adding a simple deck to your backyard versus building a full four-season sunroom extension.
Ah, yeah, that makes sense.
One's definitely cheaper and faster, right? The deck. But the extension adds way more year-round usable space and usually more equity to your home. Both are perfectly fine home improvements, but they offer very different things, different ROIs.
That's a really clear analogy. Okay, so wrapping this up, the main takeaway for listeners seems to be benching isn't necessarily wrong, but maybe be wary if it's sold as just a cheap, easy fix for what should be a bigger renovation goal.
That's it, exactly. If your main goal is to really finish that basement space, make it highly usable, maybe rent it out legally, or significantly boost your home's resale value, then underpinning is almost always going to be the smarter, more solid long-term investment.
Okay.
But like we said, if the goals are more modest, maybe just basic headroom or utility space, and the budget is really the driving factor, benching can work.
Yeah.
Just be completely realistic about those trade-offs.
Right.
And that's why we always stress how important it is to talk to a qualified basement contractor, like our team here at IcyReno. Get someone to actually inspect your home, understand what you want to achieve, and walk you through the options that make sense for your specific situation. Because honestly, the cheapest option today isn't always the most cost-effective one in the long run.
Sound advice. And if you want to dig deeper into underpinning, basement lowering, or even basement waterproofing, which is crucial no matter what method you choose, and something our team handles, definitely check out the guides on our IcyReno website.
Lots of info there.
Or even easier, just give our team a call. We offer free consultations, always happy to chat about your project, look at your basement, and help you figure out the best path forward for your home. It's a big investment. You want to make the right call.
Absolutely.
So maybe the final thought to leave everyone with today is this. When you're planning that next big home improvement, how far into the future are you really looking? And what does value truly mean for your home and how you live in it? Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.